Hi guys, hello. I was scrolling through actually, I thought I had a video for you guys. I thought I had this amazing Ask Abi intro video to give to you. No, so the beginning of this video is me just scrolling through my phone going, yeah, I've got nothing for you. Anyway, hello, lovely of you to join me. Ask Abi, questions for the Queen of Construction. My advice is free, but my taste is very expensive. Although today I am trying to be reasonable in my price because I've actually been thinking about things that we can all do ourselves. Because we are talking about energy efficiency. Now I'm going to start off this Instagram live by saying there is nothing that I can do that is a DIY or a one task job that I can get it so that your energy bills were going to be what they were before. Okay, it's not possible. Energy is going up at such a rate that all of these things are going to do well at countering that position. But, you know, kind of pen not a magic wand, guys. But we're going to be really pragmatic. We're going to go through this stuff. And you know what? This is good housekeeping that we should all be doing anyway. I think it just took a significant increase in energy costs for us to really pay attention. Now, you may ask, you guys are too polite to say this, but you may ask, Abi, who are you to talk about energy efficiency? Well, the answer to that is every construction professional thinks about something called the life cycle cost of a building. So every building that we're involved in designing, buying, building, we're not just thinking about the cost of building it to the point that we hand it over to the end user. We're thinking about the cost of building it plus maintaining it. Because it's quite easy to do things sometimes a little bit cheaply. You know, you can reduce the quality of the glazing, you can reduce the quality of the insulation, always within building regulations, always within standards. You save a little bit at the build stage, and then you have to spend more at the maintenance stage. So what we do is we think of the two together and we think of that as a life cycle cost. So everything that I'm going to be talking about, hello Chateau Bellefontaine, is going to be thinking about that maintenance stage. This session today is stuff that we can do once the building is built, and it's things that you should be able to do yourself, or if you engage someone, it's a one task job. Next week, if you are thinking about refurbishing, extending, fully building from scratch, I'm going to talk to you about energy efficiency that you physically build into the building. That can be harder to do retrospectively, and you do have to think about it holistically. But we're going to start with some of the easy wins. And as always, I've got some little videos for you. I thought I had a video to start with, so we'll see what happens. Before I go into the first video, just as a bit of a metaphor to help understand what a building is like, I like to think of a building like a body. So there are some bits of the building that, you know, they've kind of naturally got their own layers of insulation. I am talking about my bottom. But it doesn't mean to say that you don't need to layer on top clothes and something warm to keep them warm. And then there are the elements that give away heat really easily. So in the case of a body, it would be our extremities, our head, our hands, our feet. So in the case of a building, the roof is a bit like our head. The windows and the doors are a bit like our hands and our feet. And then the rest of the structure of the building is a little bit like our body. This is quite an important metaphor because over and over again, I'm going to be talking about layers of building up insulation, building up thermal protection, which helps reduce the energy going out. And that makes sense to us because we know that sometimes a top and a jumper is warmer than just one thick jumper because we know that layers work because it traps air and air helps insulate. Exactly the same principle with a building. So if you can understand it on yourself, you can understand it with a building. I hope I don't labour that point too much. Feel free to put in the comments if I do. So we're going to start off with the analogy of our body, our hands being our windows. And I'm going to show you what I think good windows should be like. So here we go. So, windows. The amount of people's homes I go to and they have not got curtains and blinds. Windows are some of the least thermal performing elements of your building. That means that they can be drafty or the heat can escape through them. even if you've got good glazing, you will find that you've still got heat being lost through your windows. I have double glazing. I have heat being lost through my windows. So what do? We need to build up layers. That is a combination of blinds, something over the window, and then some kind of window dressing as well. Now, the difficulty here is you start getting into personal taste. I've given you a range of options that are available from Dunelm, John Lewis, also giving you a little shout out of what I've got on my own. I cannot stop the audio on that. This is actually what I do in my own home. Don't worry about the aesthetics, that's not it's about creating layers. So we have a blind and they can A, custom make curtains to your own size, and they can also in terms of blinds, always get blinds that are cut to the exact size of your windows. It really helps with the thermal efficiency on it. And that's something that you can get from somewhere like Blinds Direct, again, Dunelm, John Lewis. If you fancy and you want to spend more than that, you can go to the Design Centre Chelsea and you can buy some fabulous £100 a metre fabric and get it made. But what I'm telling you is it doesn't have to be expensive. But what it does have to be, layers. And I'm going to stop sharing that before my video comes on with all the sound again. So that's windows and blinds and curtains, layers. Layers is what we're learning about that. Ideally, at least 2 layers. And that curtain, if you can have a thermal lining to that, that's really fantastic. You will notice an immediate difference if you start using blinds and curtains. You will notice that your rooms are warmer when you come to heat them. Next thing that we're going to be looking at is doors. So kind of in that body analogy, I talked about windows being hands and doors are our feet. So there we want to have something, Cat Marshall saying, I couldn't hear anything you said when the blinds were coming down. I've said it over and over again, Cat. It's just layers and layers. And get custom made blinds. So get them cut to be the right size for your windows. And someone like Blinds Direct will be able to do that for you really easily, as will Dunelm or John Lewis. They've all got ones. You can also buy blinds that you can even cut down yourself. So that's all going to be good. Didn't miss anything too exciting there. Doors, again, any of you that watched the hallway Insta live that I did, you'll know that I talk about having curtains over the door because the door is such a problem. So I'm going to talk to you twofold about the door. Kat, actually, that's a brilliant question. So Kat has asked, would the blind go inside the window or outside the window? The answer to that, Kat, is you need to make sure that the blind is going absolutely over where the glazing is. Depending on the thickness of the frame around the glazing, you can have that inside the reveal. That's the bit where it steps in before the window is. Or you can have it outside the frame. The most important thing you need to do is create a barrier of air between the glazing and where the blind is. It just becomes personal preference if it sits within the reveal or outside the reveal. It might also depend how your window opens, that may restrict you, and how your curtains sit. I have mine within the reveal because they are sliding windows that go up and down, so I can have them nice and close to the window and my curtains can move alongside them. But it does depend. Have a look at your window, and if you're not sure, just Google it. Look at some different videos. It shows you how to choose it. So in relation to doors, I'm going to show you some of the kind of learning lessons from windows, but putting them into doors. And what we're looking at here, apologies for the quality of some of these images, it's curtains over doors, guys. Listen, we need to learn from our Victorian, our Edwardian, our Georgian, people who went before us who didn't have lovely central heating. They put curtains over doors. The reason being it was the easiest thing to reduce drafts. I am going to show you some technical products that you can use to reduce drafts if you're not a big fan of curtains, but genuinely this is the easiest thing to do. You will notice that some of these curtains that are over the doors are actually over internal doorways. And that's something very important to think about, which is internal doorways may be going from a very warm space, a kitchen or a living room, into a very cold space like a hallway where the heat is getting drawn up into an upstairs area, or perhaps it's going through to a garage or a utility space which isn't heated as much. So the curtain is between a warm space and a cold space. So these images mostly are to the front door or the back door, but also think about those internal spaces. And I think most of us have that. Most of us have a room, which is kind of the colder room. And when we come on to hacks, I'll actually talk about reducing the areas that you're heating. And I'm just looking at Kat's comment. She's saying, I looked for a temporary curtain pole after your last live. I realised I couldn't do a temporary pole as the door is an insert, wouldn't be able to open it. Kat, there you can have ceiling mounted tracks. There's all kinds of things that you can do. So even if your door sits within a reveal, or even if your door is floor to ceiling, there's still ways, as long as you've got space either side, which pretty much every single door does because it has a frame of some kind, then you'll be able to get a curtain in there. So it's just about being a little bit creative. The next thing to think about in terms of doors, so this is more, we're getting into the technical products. These are products such as Storm Guard, draft exclusion tracks. You'll be able to get these things from Wix. So this is something that you put on the bottom of your door. This is what the draft excluder looks like. And also, anyone who grew up in the 80s, I think you were obligated to have one of these, which is the obligatory sausage dog draft excluder. So the technical draft exclusion can be these kind of products that you can get from Wix, you can get from Homebase, you can get from B&Q, you can install this yourself. That's a letterbox draft excluder. Or you can go something a little bit more design, which might be the curtains and the sausage dogs. So, you know, try to think about the little different options that you've got for you there. So that's really what we're thinking about in terms of doors. Remember, next week I'm going to be talking about more the build solution. So that's where we're going to be looking at upgrading the asset. So right now I'm just talking to you about things that you should be able to do kind of over the course of a weekend, get something made, get something installed yourself. Next thing to think about are your walls. Now, again, using this body analogy that we've got, you know, our walls are quite substantial, right? They should be okay at keeping the heat in, keeping the cold out. Ugh, sadly not. If you are lucky enough to live in a property that has got cavity wall insulation, which normally a property is built approximately after the 1940s, there are some innovative properties from earlier, then you will still need to check to see if that cavity wall insulation is sound. This, we're starting to get into other people involved. So cavity wall insulation, that means that you've literally got a wall, a gap, and then another course normally of bricks. Sometimes it's blockwork that's rendered. Every property is slightly different. But it's got a gap in the middle, and what they do is they fill that gap with insulation. Over time, that insulation can fail. Very, very easy to check. A company comes in, they drill a little hole, they put a camera in, they have a look around. Using that same hole, they can pump new insulation into that space. That is a job that I highly recommend you have done by a professional because you get a warranty for it. If you do not have cavity walls, please do make sure, actually, if you have cavity walls, please make sure that you haven't got any issues with damp. In the course of doing today's prep for the video, I realised that the damp-proof course on one of my bays has failed. Now that's a chemical damp-proof course, so they inject a product into the brick. It literally stops the damp. The brick is like a sponge. It just stops the damp going any further. As we know from being outside, getting rained on a little bit, water transfers heat. Damp brickwork wicks the heat out of your house. So if you have damp walls, you will find the heat's going to leave your house much more quickly. So even today, every day's a school day, right? I just found out I need to have that damp-proof course redone in my bay. Great news, it's under warranty because that's what happens when you get people to do things professionally. Occasionally they fail, it's no problem. But it's why we have to constantly keep looking at maintenance. Also in relation to walls, this is something to go behind your radiator. There are something called radiator foils. I've got some little images of them for you. Aren't you lucky? This is the end of the videos after this. So this is a reflective panel that is fitted retrospectively behind your radiator. They are made by Radflex. You can get that from Victoria Plum. Storm Guard, again, the guys that did the draft exclusion, they do something called radiator foil. Heat Keeper is another brand, radiator reflector. What these do is they're stopping your wall, your external wall, absorbing the heat from the radiator, and theoretically they are reflecting it back into the room. we're into kind of, you know, percentages of efficiency here, but everything that I'm talking to you about today is incremental gain. If we can make a 1% difference on all of these things, that could be 10% overall, and that's absolutely fantastic. When it comes to your bills, think about 10% of the bill that you're being estimated for next year. So even though each of these things individually may be like, oh, you know, this seems like a bit of a hassle, I absolutely encourage you to have a look at this. I'm going to come to the cavity question at the end there, Kat, because I think that's something that we're probably going to cover next week. Kat's asking about the cost for cavity wall inspection. So next we're going to move on to ceilings, which ceilings, you might say, oh, Abby, I'll listen to you talk about roof, but a ceiling, seriously? The reason I want you to look up and look at your ceiling is twofold. Number one is your access panels into any kind of ceiling void that you've got, and number two is the lights that you've got. Let's talk about lights first. LED. You guys know this. This isn't news to you. We should have LED lamps in our home. You may not. You may have bought some fancy light that's got some special iridescent bulb in it, or maybe you've bought a property and you just kept the lights that were there. I don't know, you didn't look at it. Please, 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 please go through your home and look at the lamps that you've got. And not all LEDs are made equal. There's a brilliant article that I'm going to link to in the notes of this from a money saving expert that helps talk about the different kinds of LEDs. And there are some fabulous companies. Speak to someone like Orlight, O-R Light. They're a company that I've used for years. They supply bulbs. What they do. If you want to geek out about LEDs, reducing your efficiency while not making the space so dull that you can't see anything, speak to a company like that. They will be able to help source you your light bulbs. Of course, you can also go to Wix, Homebase, all those normal ones that you go to. Access panels in your ceiling. Okay, probably like one or two of you might have an access panel. It's just, if you're not doing your loft, please, please, please at least think about insulating your access panel, because it could be that you've literally got your heat. Normally your ceiling is capped off. The heat kind of really isn't going anywhere. Yeah, it might be absorbed slightly through the plasterboard. But if you've got a loft hatch, especially an old one where it's just some bits of timber, probably with some gaps in it, that heat could just be escaping through there. What I would say is, if you're starting to look at your access panel, please also look at your loft and the space above it to insulate that. But it's just about looking up, and it's incremental change, right? It's 1% with everything, makes a big difference over time. Since we're talking about ceilings, let's talk about the roof. Everyone's favourite space. No, just me. There are different kinds of insulation for your loft. This is a job that you can do yourself. It is, because you can get wool insulation, and you can get it laid down. You can buy it from Homebase. You can do it yourself. It's not the horrible stuff that you have to kind of wear a mask for anymore. You can lay it all out yourself. However, what I would say is it is worth working with a professional to do your roof and your loft insulation for two reasons. Number one, if you have existing damp problems in your roof, which you might not know about, adding in more insulation when you haven't solved that could make the problem worse. You know when you put a cagoule on, like a kind of waterproof jacket, and you're actually a bit hot and you kind of start to sweat underneath? That's a thing that happens in houses as well. They call it sweaty house syndrome because people in the construction world aren't that imaginative. So a professional will know, A, they will be able to identify if you have a problem, and B, they'll ensure that the insulation is laid so that you've got the right level of ventilation, because as much as you do need to insulate, you also need to ventilate. For the rest of the stuff we're talking about, you don't need to worry about that. But when it comes to roofs and loft insulation, please, if nothing else, look at the Energy Saving Trust. I'll give a link to it in the notes to talk about a lot of this stuff. Yeah, so fab, guys. Thanks so much for interacting with me. Yeah, so very much in terms of loft insulation, Energy Saving Trust, there are different types. If you think you're going to convert the loft in the future, it might be worth spending a bit more money, putting the insulation actually under the roof tiles itself, which you have to think about. It's not just under the roof tiles. If you've got any kind of party wall, perhaps you've got an upright chimney breast that's coming up, a brick wall that's dividing between houses, that all needs to be insulated. You can't just insulate a bit. It's like wearing a woolly hat and nothing else, you know, it's not enough to keep you warm. So work with companies, work with someone to do this for you, even if they're literally just helping advising you and then you actually do the labour. Honestly, it's worth having the conversation with people. Next, so this is brilliant. We've got really far through. Now we're going to talk about the big stuff. We're going to talk about plumbing and we're going to talk about electrics. So plumbing, I'm going to give you a link to the Money Saving Expert website because it's got a really, really easy to follow guide on how to turn things down on your combination boiler to help reduce your energy bills. It includes the water temperature, the heat temperature and the preheat. It also will talk about the pressure levels where if it's not at the right pressure, that can all affect efficiency. It's worth almost taking your iPad or your phone and standing by your combi boiler. There's like 4 paragraphs of information, all of which is super easy in layman terms. Read each one and do it. Really, really simple. Then go and bleed your radiators, because bleeding your radiators is another thing with your plumbing that's going to make it more efficient. Incremental 1% gains again. Other things related to plumbing is there are water saving showers. So that's a shower head that aerates the water. So you're actually using less water, therefore you're heating less water. So you're reducing the quantity. I know what we're getting into there is I'm spending money on a shower head and maybe I'm then gonna be saving money on the heating of the water. Some of this is longer term. You're gonna see that benefit long term. But I think you can probably get these shower heads for about 15, 20 quid. So this isn't game changing stuff. The biggest one, turn the thermostat down in the house, put a jumper on. I've never had a building project where in the life cycle cost and maintenance, I've said, put a jumper on, but I think we are into that kind of territory. There's all kinds of different debate about what temperature it should be. I've seen written online that it should be 18 degrees. I attest there is no woman who would say that that is warm enough in their house. But, you know, some of these articles are written by men. That's all I'm saying. So there's loads there. I'm going to put a link to the Money Saving Expert article because it's really, really good. And I don't want to try and paraphrase it. It's absolutely fantastic. Layman terms, talks you through it, super easy. Electric. Now, this is a really important one, and this is one that I've been doing myself recently. Do you know how many things you have on standby? Do you know how many things that you've got plugged in that are using just a small amount of energy? All the time. 365 days a year. I was personally disgusted when I realised how many things I had on standby. And so what I did is I did a bit of an audit. I went round and turned off everything at its plug. And then when I needed it, I turned it on at the plug. And I'll admit to you that the Wi-Fi was the very first thing that I needed. And I don't think there is a way around that. But I've got TVs that are on standby. I've got smart speakers. I've got laptops that are constantly in and charging. Various different appliances, which I kind of don't use that frequently. So this is really good. If you can avoid having items on standby, most of them are more energy efficient than ever and they use less power than they used to, but it's just good habit to turn things off at the plug. If the plug is concealed, you know, it's like behind a piece of joinery or, you know, it's tucked away behind the washing machine, I have a prop. If you get an extension lead that's like this, extension lead, you can see it's got a power switch on it. It's not plugged in. It's normally got a little light. That means that you can turn off anything. You can just plug it in, say behind your washing machine, and then you can turn it off here. And therefore it doesn't need to be on standby. I'm just going to geek out a bit about extension leads. Never, ever, ever coil up an extension lead cable. They get hot. They can start fires. They do start fires. So that's just a little hack for you. Please never overload an extension. 3 is about the max you would have. don't run 3 massive appliances off that. If that was like a fridge, freezer, a washing machine and a dishwasher, that's too much load on one of those. We can do a whole different Ask Abi about electrics if you want to do that. It'd be fun, I'll lecture you about fire safety. Yay, how exciting for you. So what's on standby, have a think about that. What's on your fuse spur? So fuse spur is where you don't have a plug on the wall, like a 13 amp on the wall, like you can see kind of behind me over there. Instead, it's hardwired in. Fuse spurs are things like underfloor heating, your electric towel rails. A lot of your appliances in the kitchen are going to be on fuse spurs. You'll find a switch often on the wall, extractor fans, anything that kind of sits in the ceiling is often in a fuse spur. Now, most of those things you're going to use every day, but it's still really good practice to turn them off and then see if you miss having that thing operating. And it might be because it's in a spare bathroom or a spare room, you don't really notice that it's not on. A lot of things that use fuse spurs don't kind of have a lot of standby power, but again, it's this good practice of maintaining your energy usage. So we talked about underfloor heating, that is something that could also be turned down. Towel rails, if you have that, that's also something that can be turned down. And if you are relying on tumble dryers, you're using that's powered, and please, if possible, try and reduce the use of them because they're such drains on energy. Perhaps reduce the temperature, perhaps do a part dry and then air dry for the rest of it. I know that's not always practical if you've got babies or anything like that. So there's a bit of common sense in all of this. Good news, we're coming to the end. This felt a bit like a lecture, more like an Ask Abi lecture rather than Ask Abi Insta Live. I'm going to try and be a bit more fun with the end ones because it is actually quite exciting because we're saving money, right? We're saving money from these ridiculous bills we're being given. If you have a fireplace, don't boast because, people will be jealous. But do use a chimney balloon or a flue balloon. Do you know what that is? Yeah, kind of does what it sounds like. It's literally a balloon that you put into the chimney that expands and stop all your lovely hot air from leaving. It is very important that before you use the fireplace, you remove this. Conveniently, it has something that hangs down so you can see if it's in there. You have a look for the Chimney Balloon Company. I can imagine the brainstorming session to come up with a name for that. Yeah, make sure it's blocked off. And get your chimney swept as well. Again, you'll find they'll do a visual inspection. And if you've got any problems like damp ingress, remember what I said about damp, it wicks temperature out of the building, you can catch it early. And a fix at an early stage can cost in the kind of low hundreds compared to potentially tens of thousands if something is left undealt with. So it's a no-brainer. Better to know about it and do it sooner than let it become a problem down the line. Lastly, I'm just going to talk about appliances generally. I know we talked about electricity and appliances and turning things off at the switch. I would love for you to look up the energy efficiency of the big appliances in your house. That's your dishwasher, your fridge freezer, your washing machine, your tumble dryer, your TV. The reason I want you to look at those things is because if it is not A and then several plus rated, I actively would encourage you to look at replacing that appliance. If you want to check, it is a case of taking the serial number and Googling it. Some of them might even have the sticker still inside it, so you don't even have to bother doing that. If you've got anything that's kind of D, E, F rated, it's drinking energy. I heard something recently that someone's fridge was using £500 of electricity per year to run. I don't care how nice that fridge is. 500 quid a year. No way. You could look at John Lewis, look at appliances online. If you want to look for appliances that have got the energy efficiency rating, that information's all right there, right at the front. And you can even filter by energy efficiency. And you'll remember me talking about energy efficiency from the wine storage Insta Live as well. It's a little thing. So finally, we've reached the end. And I've got some final hacks for you lovely, lovely people. And these hacks are, first, heat just the rooms you use. I know it sounds so simple. I know it does. But do you know how many people I see, all their radiators across the whole of their house on the thermostatic valve, they are turned up to 6, irrespective if no one has stayed in that guest room for the last 2 years because of COVID. It can be turned down to 1. I know, it's so obvious it's almost an insult to you. We talked about my life hack with the extension cable, with the on-off button. I should sell those on my website. Oh my God. I accept this hack is correct, but it really annoys me. Using a microwave is cheaper than using the oven. I grew up in the 80s where like 90% of what I ate was microwaved, so I don't own a microwave, but I will admit there are many, many occasions where I turn my oven on and I think, this is ridiculous, all of this energy just to ... whatever it is I'm making. So yeah, I'm afraid to say use a microwave. They're really efficient. They're really fast. And just pretend it was done in the oven. You know, who cares? No one needs to know. Oh my God, this hack. Close the door. Close the door to spaces. Air movement cools air. Retain heat. Again, what did our Georgian, Victorian and Edwardian ancestors do? They built small rooms with doors and they heated up those spaces. Just those spaces, because they didn't need to heat the whole house. If you haven't got a door, put a curtain across. We're coming full circle, right, back to the advice at the beginning. Defrost your freezer, because a frosted up freezer is a very inefficient freezer. Defrost your freezer, use faster cycles on the dishwasher, use cooler settings on the washing machine, use shorter settings. Think about this stuff. All of these hacks, nothing that I've said to you is rocket science. Nothing that is particularly outside the realms of, well, I couldn't have worked that out for myself. But we simply don't think about it. We build our houses, we fit out our houses, and then we live in them really without changing our behaviours. And now what we're having to do is go back to basics and assess how can we change our behaviours. Hell of a lot of information I've thrown at you. Thank you so much for your patience in sticking with me. You've all been lovely. Thank you so much. I'm gonna give you those links in relation to the Energy Saving Trust, which is a brilliant source of independent advice. Money Saving Expert, again, brilliant source of independent advice that will signpost to anywhere else. And some of those brands that I've spoken to you about are mentioned in there. This is not sponsored in any way, shape or form. These are simply companies that I use. Thank you so much. Next week is going to be talking about energy efficiency when you are undertaking a build, when you are doing a renovation, an extension or a new build. So this is going to be like what we've been talking about on steroids. But it might be that you're thinking in the future you would like to do an extension. You would like to do something fundamental. It's really good. The best time to think about energy efficiency and the thermal efficiency of your home is the point you're building it. Because honestly, this stuff, these few little percentages here and there, you don't need to, you can like sweat this is the small stuff. Like, you know, get the big stuff sorted and you'll be fine. You won't be worrying about drafts and you won't be worrying about heat loss because it will all have thought about and built in. So thank you everyone. It's been my pleasure speaking to you. The lecture, I think, that was today. We'll try and make next week a little bit more fun. And as always, if you have any ideas, anything that you would like to ask Abby, questions for the Queen of Construction, my advice is free, but my taste is very expensive. Please message me on Instagram or via my website, which is abigailhall.design. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.